job listing appeared on a rural community board at the truck stop, where Alina Rodriguez had been living out of her car for the past week. Night shift attendant needed for isolated gas station. Competitive wages, housing available. No experience required. Must be comfortable working alone. The pay was nearly double minimum wage, and the promise of housing sealed the deal. Alina called the number immediately and spoke with a man who identified himself only as the owner. He asked 3 questions. Could she handle long hours alone? Did she have reliable transportation? Was she willing to follow instructions without asking questions? Alina said yes to all 3. She had been sleeping in parking lots and showering at truck stops for 2 weeks after losing her apartment. She could handle anything if it meant a roof over her head. The gas station was an hour outside the nearest town, sitting at a crossroads in the middle of empty farmland. 2 roads intersected in the darkness, stretching away in 4 directions toward distant horizons. The station itself was a small building with 2 pumps out front and a flickering neon sign that read open 24 hours. A trailer sat behind the building, presumably the housing that had been promised. Alina arrived just before sunset on her first day and found the current attendant waiting for her. The woman was in her 50s, thin and weathered, with gray streaked hair pulled back in a tight bun. She introduced herself as Patricia and explained that she had been working the night shift for 3 years, but was retiring due to health issues. She showed Alina around the small store, pointing out the register, the coffee machine, the hot food warmers, the storage room. Everything was standard for a gas station, except for how empty it felt. The shelves were stocked, but dusty. The coffee pots looked like they had not been used in months. The hot dogs in the warmer were shriveled and gray. Patricia handed Alina a set of keys and a laminated card. "This is everything you need to know," she said, her voice tight. "Read it carefully. Follow every rule exactly. Never deviate." Alina looked at the card and saw a list of rules printed in small, precise text. Before she could read them, Patricia continued, "The owner will pay you in cash every Friday. Someone will come by with your money and supplies. You will never meet the owner. You will work alone from sunset to sunrise every night. During the day, you can sleep in the trailer and do whatever you want. But you must be in the station before the sun goes down." Alina started to ask about customers and inventory and procedures, but Patricia cut her off. "Just follow the rules. Everything else will make sense." Then the older woman grabbed a worn duffel bag from behind the counter and headed for the door. She paused at the threshold and looked back. "I lasted 3 years. That is longer than most. If you are smart and careful, you might last even longer. Good luck." She walked to an old pickup truck and drove away without looking back, leaving Alina alone in the gas station as the sun touched the horizon. Alina locked the door behind Patricia and turned to examine the rules card. There were 20 rules printed on the laminated surface, and as she read them, a cold feeling settled in her stomach. Rule 1 stated that Alina must keep the lights on inside the station at all times during her shift. Every light in every room must remain illuminated from sunset to sunrise. If a light went out, it must be replaced immediately. Rule 2 specified that the front door must remain locked after sunset. Alina was to serve customers through the window slot in the door. No one was to be allowed inside the station after dark for any reason. Rule 3 was more specific. If someone knocked on the door after midnight and asked to use the bathroom, Alina was to tell them the facilities were out of order. If they persisted, she was to ignore them completely. Rule 4 stated that if Alina heard scratching sounds on the roof, she was to turn on the exterior lights and the sounds would stop. She was not to go outside to investigate. Rule 5 warned that sometimes the phone would ring with no one on the other end. Alina was to answer politely, wait 10 seconds of silence, then hang up. She was never to speak first or ask who was calling. Rule 6 instructed Alina to check the security cameras every hour. The cameras covered the pumps, the parking lot, and the road approaching from all 4 directions. If she saw anything unusual on the cameras, she was to make a note in the logbook, but not investigate. Rule 7 was emphatic. If a vehicle pulled up to the pumps, but no one got out, Alina was to watch it on the cameras for exactly 5 minutes. If no one had emerged by then, she was to turn off the exterior pump lights for 30 seconds, then turn them back on. The vehicle would be gone. Rule 8 stated that the storage room door must remain closed and locked at all times. Alina would receive deliveries through the back door, but she was never to enter the storage room after midnight. If she needed supplies after that time, she would have to wait until dawn. Rule 9 was unsettling. If Alina saw a child alone outside the station at night, she was not to acknowledge them or attempt to help them. The child was not real and would leave on its own. Rule 10 specified that between the hours of 2 and 3 in the morning, Alina might hear music playing faintly. She was to turn on the radio behind the counter loud enough to drown it out. She was not to try to identify where the music was coming from or what song was playing. Rule 11 warned that occasionally a customer would pay with money that looked slightly wrong. Old bills, strange denominations, or currency that felt too smooth or too rough. Alina was to accept this money without comment and place it in a separate envelope in the register. It would be collected with her pay. Rule 12 stated that if all the security cameras went dark at once, Alina was to go into the back office, lock the door, and wait until they came back on. This might take anywhere from 5 minutes to an hour. She was not to leave the office or try to see what was happening outside. Rule 13 instructed that if someone asked for directions to a place Alina had never heard of, she was to tell them to head north and drive until dawn. She was not to say she did not know the place or ask for clarification. Rule 14 was direct. If Alina smelled gasoline inside the station and could not find a source, she was to open all the windows and doors immediately and vacate to the trailer. She was to wait there until the smell dissipated before returning. Rule 15 stated that sometimes customers would behave strangely, speaking in odd patterns or moving in unusual ways. Alina was to serve them normally and not react to their behavior. They would leave on their own. Rule 16 warned that if Alina saw her own face looking back at her in the windows, she was to close her eyes, count to 20, and the reflection would return to normal. She was not to interact with the reflection or look at it directly. Rule 17 specified that if more than 3 vehicles arrived at exactly the same time, Alina was to lock herself in the back office until all but one had left. She was not to serve groups. Rule 18 stated that if anyone asked about the previous attendant, Alina was to say they had moved away for personal reasons. She was not to provide details or elaborate. Rule 19 instructed that if Alina ever felt an overwhelming urge to walk outside and keep walking into the darkness, she was to call the emergency number posted by the phone. Someone would talk her through the feeling until it passed. And Rule 20, printed in slightly larger text, simply read, "If you break any of these rules, leave immediately and do not come back. The next attendant will start tomorrow night." Alina read through the list 3 times, trying to make sense of it. The rules felt like they described a place that was fundamentally wrong, where normal logic did not apply. But the pay was good, and she had nowhere else to go. She decided to treat it like any other job. Follow the instructions, do the work, collect the paycheck. How bad could it be? Her first customer arrived an hour after sunset. An old truck pulled up to the pumps, and a man in his 60s climbed out, moving slowly. Alina watched on the camera as he pumped his gas, paid at the pump with a credit card, and drove away. Normal routine. She relaxed slightly. Maybe the rules were just paranoid precautions, unlikely scenarios that the owner wanted covered just in case. The second customer came at 10. A sedan with a young couple who bought snacks and coffee through the window slot. They seemed tired and grateful for the coffee, chatting about their road trip. Alina rang them up and sent them on their way. Still normal. She started to think maybe this job would not be so strange after all. Then midnight arrived, and everything changed. Alina was restocking the cold case when she felt the air pressure in the station shift, like a door had opened somewhere. The lights flickered once, and when they steadied, the quality of the light seemed different, harsher, more artificial. She looked at the clock and saw it had just struck 12. As if on cue, someone knocked on the front door. Alina went to the window and saw a man standing outside, middle-aged and ordinary, looking in jeans and a jacket. He smiled and made a gesture toward the door. "Can I use your bathroom?" His voice was muffled through the glass, but clear enough. Alina remembered Rule 3. After midnight, bathroom requests were to be denied. She leaned close to the window slot. "Sorry, the restroom is out of order." The man's smile did not change. "Come on, I really need to go. It will just take a minute." Alina shook her head. "Sorry, it is out of order." The man stood there for a long moment, still smiling. Then his expression changed. The smile remained, but something behind his eyes went cold. He stared at Alina without blinking, without moving, for at least 2 minutes. Then he turned and walked away into the darkness beyond the pumps. Alina watched on the cameras until he disappeared from view. He never got into a car. He just walked into the empty fields and vanished. At 12:30, Alina heard scratching on the roof. Slow, deliberate scratching, like something dragging claws across the metal. She remembered Rule 4 and immediately went to the panel of switches behind the counter. She flipped on the exterior lights, flooding the parking lot and the area around the building with harsh illumination. The scratching stopped instantly. Alina waited 5 minutes, then turned off the exterior lights, except for the ones illuminating the pumps. The scratching did not resume. The phone rang at 1 in the morning. Alina picked it up. "Hello, this is the gas station. How can I help you?" Silence on the other end. Not even the sound of breathing, just pure empty silence. Alina counted to 10 slowly, then hung up as instructed. The phone rang again 2 minutes later. She answered, waited through 10 seconds of silence, and hung up. It rang a third time. Same procedure. After that, it stopped. At 1:30, a van pulled up to the pumps. Alina watched on the camera as it sat there, engine running. No one getting out. She checked the time and waited. 5 minutes passed with no movement. Following Rule 7, Alina switched off the exterior pump lights. She counted to 30 in darkness, then flipped them back on. The van was gone. Not driving away, just gone, as if it had never been there. Alina checked all the cameras at 2, as instructed by Rule 6. Everything looked normal, empty roads in all directions, the parking lot deserted, the pumps standing silent. Then she heard it, music faint and distant, like an old radio playing somewhere far away. The melody was strange, not quite any song she recognized, with an underlying rhythm that made her feel anxious. She turned on the radio behind the counter, finding a late-night talk show, and turning up the volume until the distant music was completely drowned out. She kept the radio on until 3, when the mysterious music finally faded away. At 3:30, a customer came in who made Alina deeply uncomfortable. A woman in her 40s who moved in a jerky, stilted way, like a puppet being controlled by unpracticed hands. She stood at the window and asked for cigarettes, but her mouth did not quite sync with her words. Alina got the cigarettes and rang them up, trying not to stare. The woman paid with bills that felt too smooth, almost waxy. Alina put them in the special envelope as instructed. The woman left, her movements still wrong, climbing into a car that Alina had not seen arrive. Rule 15. Serve them normally. Do not react. The night continued with periodic strangeness. More phone calls with silence. More scratching on the roof that stopped when the lights came on. A truck that sat at the pumps for exactly 5 minutes before vanishing when the lights were killed. At 4 a.m, Alina saw a child standing at the edge of the parking lot, maybe 7 years old, alone in the darkness. The child did not move, just stood there watching the station. Alina forced herself to look away and focus on other tasks. When she checked the cameras again 20 minutes later, the child was gone. Dawn came slowly, the sky lightening from black to gray to pale blue. As the sun rose, Alina felt the atmosphere in the station shift again, the oppressive weight lifting. By 7 a.m, everything felt normal again. She unlocked the front door and let the morning air flow through. A delivery truck arrived with supplies, and the driver was cheerful and ordinary, commenting on the nice weather. Alina signed for the delivery and watched him drive away, back toward the normal world. She went to the trailer and collapsed on the narrow bed, exhausted from the tension of the night. But sleep did not come easily. She kept thinking about the man who had walked into the darkness, the van that had vanished, the child that was not real. What was this place? Why did it attract such strangeness? But the money was good, and she had nowhere else to go. She would last as long as she could. The pattern repeated over the following weeks, ordinary enough during the early evening hours, then increasingly strange after midnight. Alina learned to recognize the signs. The shift in air pressure at midnight, the phone calls with silence, the vehicles that appeared and disappeared, the figures that were not quite human. She followed the rules precisely, and nothing harmed her. The job became a routine of managed strangeness. In her 3rd week, Alina encountered Rule 16. She was wiping down the counter when she glanced at the window and saw her own reflection looking back at her. But the reflection was not moving in sync. It was smiling when Alina was not smiling. It was watching her with an intensity that her actual face did not possess. Alina immediately closed her eyes and began counting. 1, 2, 3. She could feel the wrongness of the reflection, the sense that if she looked at it again, something terrible would happen. 4, 5, 6. She counted all the way to 20, forcing herself to breathe slowly. When she opened her eyes, her reflection was normal again, mimicking her movements exactly. A man came through around 3 a.m. and asked for directions to a place called Blackwater Crossing. Alina had never heard of it, did not see it on any of the maps behind the counter. But she remembered Rule 13. Head north, she told him. Drive until dawn. The man nodded as if this made perfect sense and left. Alina watched him drive north on the camera until his taillights disappeared. In her 4th week, Alina experienced Rule 12 for the first time. She was checking the cameras at 1 in the morning when they all went dark simultaneously. Every screen showing only black. Her heart began racing as she remembered the instruction. She went into the back office, a tiny room with a desk and a chair and a lock on the door. She locked herself in and sat in the darkness, listening. Outside the office, she could hear sounds, footsteps, multiple sets of them walking through the station. Whispers that did not form words, the sound of the register opening and closing, the cooler doors being opened. It sounded like the store was full of customers, but Alina knew the front door was locked. She had checked it herself. The sounds continued for 40 minutes. Alina sat in the dark office, hands gripping the edge of the desk, trying not to imagine what was out there. Finally, she heard a sound like wind chimes, clear and musical, and then silence. She waited another 5 minutes before carefully opening the office door. The cameras were back on, all showing empty views. Alina checked every corner of the station, but found nothing disturbed. Except there were wet footprints on the floor, dozens of them, tracking from nowhere to nowhere. In her 6th week, Alina found the strange money in the register had multiplied. The envelope that should have held maybe $50 worth of odd bills now contained hundreds. The bills themselves were getting stranger, some printed with dates from decades in the future, others with denominations that did not exist. Alina did not mention this in her logbook, just sealed the envelope and left it for collection. The delivery driver came every Friday with her pay and supplies. He was always different, never the same person twice, but they all had the same instructions. Leave the items, collect the envelope, hand over the cash, and leave without conversation. Alina received her wages in crisp new bills that spent normally in town when she made her weekly supply runs during the day. Whatever strangeness infected the nights did not follow the money. In her 8th week, Alina encountered Rule 17. Just after midnight, 3 cars pulled up to the pumps at exactly the same instant. She watched on the cameras as people got out of each vehicle, 6 people total, and they all moved in perfect sync. Same gestures, same timing, like dancers in a choreographed routine. Alina immediately went to the back office and locked the door. Through the walls, she could hear knocking on the front door, 6 hands knocking in rhythm. The sound continued for several minutes. Then one by one the cars left, until only a single vehicle remained. Alina waited another 10 minutes before leaving the office. The last customer was an ordinary-looking woman who bought gas and left without incident. Alina made it to 3 months, longer than most according to Patricia. She had developed a routine, a mental script for handling each type of strangeness. The rules became second nature. She no longer felt panic when odd things happened, just a professional detachment. This was her job: manage the strangeness, follow the protocols, survive until dawn. but the place was changing her. Alina noticed it when she went into town for supplies. The other people seemed too loud, too bright, too present. She felt disconnected from them, like she was watching them through a window. The daylight bothered her eyes now. She found herself preferring the controlled environment of the gas station, the predictable unpredictability of the rules. She was adapting to the strangeness, and that adaptation was making normal life feel foreign. In her 4th month, Alina experienced Rule 14. She was restocking shelves when she suddenly smelled gasoline, strong and overpowering. Despite no visible source, she immediately opened every window and both doors, then retreated to the trailer as instructed. She sat on the small porch and watched the station, wondering what was happening inside. After 20 minutes, she cautiously approached and sniffed. The gasoline smell was gone, replaced by normal air. She secured the building and continued her shift, but she noticed that some of the products on the shelves had changed positions, not dramatically, just slightly wrong, as if someone had been shopping while she was gone. The urge came in her 5th month. Alina was mopping the floor at 4 in the morning when she suddenly wanted to walk outside, not just wanted, but needed. The desire was overwhelming, pulling at her like physical hands. She needed to walk into the darkness, needed to keep walking, needed to see what was out there beyond the lights. Her hand was on the door handle before she caught herself. Rule 19. She stumbled to the phone and dialed the emergency number. A voice answered immediately, calm and professional. "You are experiencing the call. Stay on the line. Do not go outside." Alina gripped the phone, her other hand still on the door handle. "I need to go out there," she said, her voice strained. "There is something I need to see." "No," the voice said firmly. "There is nothing out there for you. Whatever you think you need to see is a lie. Stay inside. Talk to me. What is your name?" "Alina." Her name is Alina, and she has been working at the station for 5 months. The voice began asking her questions about her life, her history, anything to keep her talking and thinking about normal things. Where did she grow up? What was her favorite food? Did she have family? Alina answered mechanically. Her focus split between the conversation and the overwhelming need to walk outside. The urge pulled at her consciousness like a tide. After 30 minutes, the feeling began to subside. Alina's hand relaxed on the door handle, and she stepped back. The voice on the phone continued talking, gentle and steady, until Alina confirmed that the urge was gone completely. "You did well," the voice said. "Many people do not resist the call. You are stronger than you know." Then the line went dead. Alina sat behind the counter for the rest of the shift, shaken. What would have happened if she had walked out? Where would she have gone? She did not want to know. In her 6th month, Alina started seeing patterns. The strangeness was not random. It followed cycles, lunar perhaps, or tied to something else she could not identify. Some nights were relatively quiet, with only minor oddities. Other nights were intensely active, with multiple rules triggered every hour. She began to predict which nights would be worse based on subtle signs. The quality of the sunset, the temperature drop at dusk, the way the lights flickered when she turned them on. She also noticed that she was not entirely alone in understanding. Sometimes truckers would stop during the early evening before midnight, and they would look at the station with recognition in their eyes. They would buy their gas and leave quickly, never lingering. And Alina understood that they knew about this place, that they avoided it after dark, that there were people who drove these roads regularly and knew which stops were safe and which were not. Alina made it to her 7th month and received a bonus in her pay envelope, along with a note in neat handwriting. Exceptional performance. Extended contract approved. Compensation increased. She realized that she had become valuable to whatever operation this was. She had learned to manage the impossible, and that skill was rare. Around this time, Alina started testing boundaries, small tests, nothing that violated the rules directly. She began keeping detailed notes about the phenomena, trying to understand the logic behind them. The vehicles that vanished followed specific timing. The strange customers appeared most often between 2 and 4 in the morning. The phone calls with silence always came in sets of 3. There were patterns within the chaos. She also started preparing for scenarios not covered by the rules. Alina purchased a powerful flashlight and kept it behind the counter. She memorized every exit and every hiding place in the building. She created backup plans for what she would do if the rules failed, or if something entirely new occurred. This preparation gave her a sense of control in a situation designed to be uncontrollable. In her 8th month, something new happened. A bus pulled up to the pumps just after midnight. A full-sized coach bus with tinted windows. Alina watched it on the cameras, waiting to see if anyone would get out. Rule 7 said to wait 5 minutes for vehicles, with no occupants emerging. But this felt different. After 3 minutes, the door of the bus opened. People began filing out, dozens of them, too many to fit in a single bus. They moved in complete silence, spreading across the parking lot. All of them were facing the station. All of them were watching her. This scenario was not covered by the rules. Alina made a quick decision and went to the back office, locking herself in. Through the cameras, she watched the figures surround the building. They did not try the doors or knock on the windows. They just stood there, a crowd of silent watchers. Alina counted over 50 figures, even though a bus that size should hold maybe 40 passengers. They stood in the darkness for 2 hours before finally, one by one, they filed back onto the bus. The bus drove away heading west, and Alina emerged from the office. There were no footprints in the parking lot, despite the recent rain. She reported the incident in the logbook. The next delivery included a new rule card with 21 items. Rule 21 stated, If a bus arrives with more passengers than it should hold, retreat to the back office and wait until it leaves. Do not count the passengers. Do not try to identify them. Alina realized that the rules were evolving based on experiences, that she was helping to map the territory of strangeness. In her 9th month, Alina encountered another night shift attendant, not at her station, but at a truck stop 40 miles away during one of her supply runs. The woman was young, maybe mid-20s, and she had a hollow look in her eyes that Alina recognized. They made eye contact across the parking lot, and something passed between them. Recognition, understanding. They approached each other slowly. "You work nights," the woman said. It was not a question. At the crossroads station, Alina confirmed. The woman nodded. "I work at the junction stop on Route 53. "How long?" 9 months, Alina said. The woman looked impressed. "That is good. I have been at mine for 7 months. Do you have the rules?" Alina nodded. 21 of them now. The woman smiled grimly. "I have 18. Different, but the same idea, I bet." They compared notes carefully, not violating their non-disclosure agreements, but sharing enough to confirm that they were dealing with similar phenomena. The other woman's station had its own strange occurrences, its own protocols. They were both attendants at boundary stations, places where something else leaked through. Before they parted, the other woman gave Alina advice. "Do not try to understand it. I spent months trying to figure out what it all meant, and it nearly broke me. Just follow the rules and take the money. We are border guards, nothing more." Alina thought about this. Border guards. The metaphor made sense. They were maintaining a line between the normal world and something else, and the rules were their tools for keeping that line intact. In her 10th month, Alina began dreaming about the station, even when she slept during the day. In the dreams, she was working her shift, but the rules were different or wrong, and she would violate them without realizing until it was too late. She would wake in a panic, checking the rule card she kept by her bed to reassure herself that she had not actually broken anything. The job was bleeding into her subconscious, changing her even in sleep. She also noticed physical changes. Alina had lost weight, her body adapting to the irregular schedule and the constant low-level stress. Her hair was graying prematurely at the temples. Her hands had developed a tremor that came and went. The job was taking a toll, but the alternative was returning to sleeping in her car and searching for work that did not exist. She chose to stay. Approaching her 11th month, Alina had a conversation with the voice on the emergency line. She had called not because of the urge, but because she wanted to talk to someone who understood. The voice seemed surprised, but agreed to chat. Alina asked how long most attendance lasted. The voice hesitated. Most quit within 3 months. Some disappear. A very few last years. You are approaching a full year, which puts you in rare company. Alina asked what happened to the ones who disappeared. The voice was quiet for a moment. broke the rules, or they stopped believing the rules mattered. Either way, they crossed a line they should not have crossed. "What is on the other side of that line?" Alina asked. The voice sighed. "Nothing good. The rules exist to keep you on the safe side. As long as you follow them, you are protected by the agreement. Break them, and the agreement is void. You become fair game for whatever is out there." Alina asked what the agreement was, who had made it. The voice said those were questions above their pay grade. Just know that it exists, and that it keeps you safe. That has to be enough. Alina made it to 1 full year, an accomplishment marked by a significant bonus in her pay envelope, and a letter of commendation from the owner she had never met. She had survived 12 months at the Crossroads station, handling every variety of strangeness the place could produce. She felt both proud and profoundly changed. The Alina who had arrived a year ago, desperate and homeless, was gone. In her place was someone harder, more aware, carrying knowledge of things most people never encountered. She decided to continue for another contract period. Where else could she go? The money was good. The work was manageable if you followed the rules, and she had nowhere else to be. More importantly, she had become good at this job. She understood the rhythms and patterns, could handle almost anything the night shift threw at her. She was a professional border guard. In her 13th month, Alina trained a new attendant for the daytime shift. A young man named Chris who needed the work and did not ask too many questions. Alina warned him about the rules for day shift, which were minimal. Keep the place clean, be polite to customers, do not go into the storage room. She did not tell him about the night shift rules because that was not his concern. He would work dawn to dusk and never see the strangeness. Alina found herself envying his ignorance while also feeling superior. He would never know what she knew, never develop the skills she had learned. As her 2nd year approached, Alina realized she had stopped thinking about leaving. This was her life now. The station, the trailer, the endless nights of managed strangeness. She had adapted so completely that normal life felt like a distant memory. She kept following the rules, kept surviving, kept collecting her pay. She was good at this job, perhaps the best they had ever had, and in a strange way, that gave her purpose. The night of her 18th month brought something new. Alina was watching the cameras when she saw something moving in the distance on the North Road. At first it looked like heat shimmer, a distortion in the air. But as it got closer, she realized it was something far stranger. A ripple in reality itself, a wave of distortion moving down the road toward the station. Behind the ripple, the world looked different. The road was made of different material. The landscape was subtly altered. Even the stars were in wrong positions. This was not covered by any rule. Alina made a judgment call and did what had worked before when facing unprecedented situations. She retreated to the back office, locked the door, and waited. Through the small window she watched as the ripple reached the station. For a moment, the entire building seemed to shift, the walls becoming translucent, the familiar space overlapping with somewhere else. Alina could see figures moving in that other space, shadows that might have been people or might have been something else entirely. Then the ripple passed, moving south down the road, and everything snapped back to normal. Alina emerged from the office and checked every camera, every window, every corner. Everything appeared intact, but she noticed that the clock had jumped forward 15 minutes, with no memory of that time passing. She documented the incident in the logbook in as much detail as she could. The next delivery included updated rules. Rule 22. If reality appears to distort or shift, retreat to the back office immediately and wait for normal conditions to return. Do not attempt to interact with the altered space. Time discrepancies may occur and should be noted, but are not dangerous. In her 20th month, Alina had a realization. She had been working at the station for almost 2 years, and in that time, she had never met the owner or learned what the facility really was. She had followed rules without understanding their origin, guarded a boundary without knowing what it protected or what it held back. And she had accepted this lack of knowledge because the alternative was unthinkable. But now, deep into her 2nd year, she found herself wanting answers. She began investigating carefully, never violating rules, but looking for clues in the margins. The strange money that accumulated suggested currency from somewhere else, trades being made between realities. The phenomena that followed lunar cycles suggested cosmic timing. The figures that appeared and disappeared implied beings that could move between spaces. Alina assembled a theory. The station sat at a crossroads not just of roads, but of worlds, a thin place where barriers were weak and passage was possible. The rules maintained protocols that allowed limited, controlled interaction while preventing full breach. She and other attendants were gatekeepers, ensuring the barrier held while permitting necessary exchanges. It was just a theory, and she could never confirm it, but it helped her make sense of her role. She was not just manning a gas station. She was maintaining a border between realities, allowing controlled contact while preventing chaos. It gave her work meaning beyond simple survival. In her 22nd month, Alina encountered the man from her first night again. The one who had asked to use the bathroom and been denied, who had stared at her with cold eyes before walking into the darkness. He appeared at the window just after midnight, looking exactly the same as 2 years earlier. "Can I use your bathroom?" he asked with that same wrong smile. Alina denied him as she had before. "Sorry, the restroom is out of order." He stood there staring, then nodded slowly. "You have learned well," he said, his voice different now, less human. "You are a good keeper." Then he walked away into the darkness, and Alina understood that it had been a test. That first night and this night, bookends to her tenure, checking if she remained consistent. as Alina approached her second-year anniversary, she received an offer to transfer to a management position, overseeing multiple boundary stations, training new attendants, developing protocols. The pay was excellent, the hours were better, and she would no longer work the front lines. But Alina found herself hesitating. She had become so adapted to this specific station, to these specific rules, that leaving felt wrong. She had developed a relationship with this place, learned its moods and patterns. She was its keeper, and it was her territory. She declined the management position and signed on for a third year. The money was increased, the bonuses were larger, and she was given authority to modify rules based on her experience. Alina had become an expert in maintaining boundaries, perhaps the best they had. She had survived everything the Crossroads station could throw at her, and had emerged stronger, stranger, but intact. On the night of her 2-year anniversary, Alina stood behind the counter at midnight and felt the familiar pressure shift as the station moved into its night phase. She checked the cameras, verified the locks, reviewed the rules card that now listed 24 protocols. Outside, something moved in the darkness beyond the lights. The phone rang with its silent caller. A vehicle pulled up and sat without occupants emerging. All the familiar patterns of strangeness that had become her routine. Alina handled each situation with practiced efficiency, following the rules that kept her safe, maintaining the boundary that protected both sides. She was the night shift attendant at the Crossroads station, a keeper of borders, a guardian of the thin places. It was a strange calling, but it was hers, and she was very, very good at it. The hours passed, dawn approached, and Alina kept her post, watching the boundary, following the rules, surviving another night at the gas station in the middle of nowhere, where things arrived after midnight, things that she now understood, managed, and kept in their proper place. She had found her purpose in the strangest possible location, and she would continue this work as long as she was able, standing guard at the crossroads where worlds brushed against each other, where the rules were all that kept chaos at bay, where Alina Rodriguez had become something more than human, but not quite something else. She was the keeper, and the night was hers to guard.